Well, this is a bit different. I'm up at Manx Radio being interviewed. It's always a bit strange being on the other side of the microphone. But James Davis asked me to do a piece for Mandate talking about online video and other things like that in the Isle of Man. So here's the interview.
Well, Paul Moulton, first of all, the news confirmed earlier this week that an internet TV channel, a daily news service Monday to Friday, which started last year and became daily Monday to Friday at the start of this year, has now stopped, certainly in its current form. First of all, what's your initial reaction to that?
Well, it was always going to be quite a challenge to produce that sort of television, and I had a look at both those sort of models. And I've said before we say more that I'm talking as Paul Moulton, not as part of Manx Telecom. I supply 2MT TV. So you've got these two models, which mine is shoot it and bang it up. When you get something, don't wait around. And of course, their model was much more a linear program, as I call it, the old-fashioned television. When you sit there and you watch a program, you may get 2 or 3 items in it, and you wait until what, 4:30 at night for that to be put up.
Why do you think the demand? Why do you think the demand was not as the bosses behind the project hoped?
Well, I don't think you see numbers. I mean, I know ManxTube and YouTube, they have a counter, but I don't know how many actually were watching every episode on other platforms, because it was available in different places. As I said, I think it's a question of people want news as and when. I mean, yourself, you'd know that. You've got built on the hour, you've also got the use of the internet, and you put it up these days. Do you want to sit through a programme that may last 10, 15 minutes for something you might want to watch, when you just want to watch that one item these days? People are very finicky, and they're getting worse. I mean,
what does this tell us, though, about potential future news services for the island? We hear often about the BBC and the Channel Islands, Jersey and Guernsey, the offering there. Will there be demand for something similar here, or has this project proved otherwise? Well,
no, I think actually to see what the Channel Islands gets is what the Isle of Man should have. I've been quite vocal about this for a long time. I mean, there's a £2 million shortfall the BBC has admitted. Between £1 and £2 million they should be spending more on the Isle of Man. What they're doing, I'm not sure yet, has anything actually materialised, because obviously there's 3 posts here, of which I was one for a while, so I know what goes on, and you're fighting to feed into the northwest of England, making up 1% of the audience. Now, down in the Channel Islands, they've got their own opt-out on the BBC. It's been going for 11 years now. That's a 10-minute opt-out, which would be obviously something that people really like to watch.
And do you think if we had that, the locals would tune in every night?
I think there's still that thing of sitting down and having a point-of-view sort of television, definitely.
So the on-demand service that was offered by TV.IM, perhaps not the following for that?
Well, it looked like television, didn't it? But it wasn't on television. I think that's the biggest problem. Although you can, I mean, I've got a smart TV and I can sit down.
You can access it, yeah.
But that's the problem at the minute. It's mostly people watching it on tablets or on their computers. It's not quite the same thing. And I think we're passing the point now this year where more people are watching media on the move, on their mobiles and things like that. And that's going to be the future, isn't it? I think. And I know with 4G coming next year, we've got some very exciting plans. I mean, we can...
Tell us about that. I mean, certainly plans at this stage for an extra presenter or two, a mobile app. What exactly is lined up at this stage?
Well, all that. I mean, if we get more presenters, I think there's obviously the Paul Moulton fatigue thing, and I get that myself because I'm on everything. But to be honest, we never thought we'd be doing so much coverage. The plans were for maybe one a day and that sort of thing. Well, if I can do more, I will do more. It's just a question of how I can fix my time. I can turn them around very fast, because I mean the difference in the packaging on television, it would take me a whole day to do an item that lasts maybe 1 minute 30, because you've got to interview 3 different people, you've got to do a lot of voiceover work.
In terms of production values, it is very different. I mean, do you believe Manx Telecom will continue to generate enough advertising to support it?
Well, it's looking good. I mean, I'm not involved in that side, but I mean, there's pre-roll since the days 1 of the whole operation. It's a 10-second thing, so it's not too much either. And there are advertisers on there. I mean, cost-wise, it's a very small operation compared with probably what the TV.IM was. Because I mean, I turn up there to be the presenter there, a cameraman there, then it would go back and they'd have an editor and the studio and all that. It takes a lot of people, and that possibly isn't there in the money terms. You know how we're all squeezed, James. I mean, I still think in the future maybe more cooperation. I still understand why we can't all work together more. I mean, you know how we all turn up to the same press conference.
Well, in terms of media, I mean, how would you envisage that in terms of sharing resources? Are you talking the island's radio stations, the newspaper, and yourselves? What exactly is your idea?
Well, definitely. I mean, I can provide audio to the radio stations. In fact, when I was at Granada, we had experiments, I think with both yourself and the other commercials for a while, that they would use the audio and all they had to do was give a credit. You yourselves use Sky News technically in the mornings, and everything has a clip of Sky for the international part. I think that's a great and easy way to do it, and especially with manpower. I mean, we went to press conferences last week. There was so much media there, and yet we're all covering the same thing. There's going to be, I think, much more bringing it all together. I'd hope so anyway, and why not? I mean, as long as there's
more cost effective, but presumably jobs have to go somewhere or other.
I don't know if the jobs are going because of that, or they're just going anyway. I mean, you know the squeeze that's going on in media in general. You're doing more phone interviews possibly than you used to do when you'd go out and have a chance to go and talk to people. That's just the way your days have to be altered, because you can't afford to leave the news desk as much as you possibly could have done because your manning levels are lower. I mean, I'm only a one-man person, so my days, and if I'm not here, I can't do it, period.
Discussions, any indications that discussions could get going on this?
I've always been open for it. I mean, I don't know if your end or I don't know now with TV.IM not finishing if the commercials would like it, but I would certainly have no problem with it. I think it's definitely the way. You start with pictures, you can then do your online, and you can take the audio off that. It seems the way forward for me.
Should Tynwald be televised? Ultimately?
Well, yes, absolutely. And we have had discussions. I mean, I don't know if it'd be me doing it, but certainly we've offered to do a demo for them, which would be non-broadcastable, but just for their own purposes, just, again, on one camera possibly. So keeping it all mean and lean. I mean, you see what happens in the UK. That's what you should have. Lots of cameras and one operator. You yourself, when you do Tynwald for the audio, could be doing the television it's a touch screen. You just click the button and all the cameras go on that person, and that's the only extra to it. It's possible, and that's probably where the BBC money again should be looked at. I think the Communications Commission have to be harder. They have to be tougher possibly to get things moving, because it's okay saying the BBC's got no money, but the fact is they've stood up and said they need to spend.
Is there now the time to do this, because there is a debate and an ongoing review into the island's public service broadcasting?
Well, if I'm asked to give evidence, this is the sort of thing I'll be saying. I mean, I'm down on the list. I don't know if I'll be called or not, but you know, there's a lot of money there that could be used for public service broadcasting, which would free up other resources. And you yourselves, this radio station could do with that sort of extra input of money, and if it comes from the licence fee, that could be the way forward. Just
finally, this isn't the end of TV.IM as such. Of course, the daily news service has stopped, but do you believe it will rear its head again for other projects?
Well, they're involved with Greenlight, and Greenlight's a fantastic organisation. They've got tons of footage of, especially motorsport. I'd be thinking, yes, there's got to be some future. It's more about getting eyeballs to come to your site. I mean, that's the thing, isn't it? I would always look at your site.
You need the advertising revenue, of course.
Yeah. But you want to be the sites that people go to. So I'd go to Manx Radio in the morning to look at yours. I'd also look at the papers. But everyone has their sort of favourites in the morning, where they're going to go. And if you can make it to that, then you can get the advertising to follow. I mean, we've done over 1 million. The press release went out the other day. And it would probably be a lot more. There was one stage where it was so popular, the thing wasn't loading well. And for anyone who wants to come back, try it again now, because it's fast, it works. But it was a victim of its own success at one stage. Now, people can get that. And lots of people around the world want also to know about Manx News. It's funny.
Deja vu? Do you get a feeling of deja vu in the whole media debate and the media landscape in the island?
Yes, but it's a fascinating thing that we've got to push harder at. And it is between the minister and the comms to say, look, give the Isle of Man what it's deserving in the media. Why are we second best? Why don't we get more of this money to spend on the Isle of Man and getting the news for the Isle of Man? When you're part of the Northwest, be it Granada or BBC, back to the television side of it, and look at the tragic incidents last week, how much coverage that got. Now, something happens in Manchester, it's going to get lots more. It's just the way it works. And you can't blame the news editors in those organisations. We're 1% of those audience sizes. We should be our own independent place, just like the Channel Islands gets. Whatever the Channel Islands is getting, I would think the Isle of Man should have the same.